It's true. Yes, I have seen the fall of the House of Usher. But why do you say that I have lost control of my mind? Why do you say that I am mad? That thumbnail makes a bold claim, so I should admit that I've not watched all of Mike Flanigan's projects. And it's been years since I've seen Hill House. I thought it peaked early on with The Bent-Neck Lady, and the rest is kind of a blur of dark blue colour grading and speeches. I didn't finish Blind Manor. Midnight Mass has definitely stayed with me the most, but it took me a while to get into. So I'm somewhat lukewarm on Flanigan's approach overall. Indeed, the neutrality only made my mind, my feelings, my media literacy, my hot takes more powerful. And it isn't because of attachment I have to the source material. There's a lot to like about his work. He's really good at juggling large casts of well-drawn characters. He blends the psychological with the supernatural, but doesn't tip his hand as to which one we're seeing at any given moment. And I find his subject matter interesting, especially seeing how he's apparently a fan of Doctor Who, in particular the Moffat era. That can be a double-edged sword, however, because if two people like the same thing, they might like it for different reasons. The Big Bang is excellent in what it's trying to be, but it wouldn't be in my top 5 Moffat stories. So, from the bottom of my heart, Mike, thank you for making me miserable this time around. This seething, filthy, depraved, occasionally hilarious horror drama was exactly what I needed. Listen and I will tell you how it happened. You will see, you will hear how healthy my mind is. So the patriarch of the Usher family and CEO of pharmaceutical company Fortunato, Roderick Usher, is narrating the story of how his children all died recently to the lawyer that's been trying to build a case against him for nearly all their adult lives. Our Sackler stand-in also tells Auguste Dupin about his earlier life, the death of their mother, how he and his sisters took over their father's company from Rufus Griswold, and how their encounter with a strange magic lady called Verna, who kind of reminds me of the Outsider in places, went on New Year's Eve and how it started this whole thing. A confession being taken in the ruins of a family home during a storm is a wonderful framing device, and apparently this is the bit that riffs off the Edgar Allan Poe story that this series is named after. Each episode after the first focuses on a different family member without neglecting the other players in the story, and we watch with anticipation to see what kind of fate is going to befall each one of them. Anyone who's seen it already will probably know this, but the bit that had me hooked was, as the ending of episode 2. But this show has a lot more on its mind than water cooler moments. Roderick and Madeline Usher, the two people who made the deal with the devil, are running a pharmaceutical company. They push a painkiller. It's a very simple metaphor, but I actually mean that as a compliment. The opioid crisis and the role the pharmaceutical industry played in it via aggressive marketing, paralleling that with a Faustian deal with the devil, where you get freedom from consequences and success, but it ends with people dead. That's just really good storytelling, aside from the niggle that the 1% and CEOs hardly need supernatural means to stay afloat. And the show directly addresses this. I suppose that's the annoying thing about Flanigan's writing. I struggle to find ways to communicate what his shows are about that his shows do not already use. He'll do the video essay for me, the bastard.
You can't eliminate pain. There's no such thing as a painkiller.
If unfaithful adaptations bothered you, this might not be the case here, just for the sheer volume of Poe's stories being riffed on, because you're not comparing it to one individual text. Borrowing imagery and words on this scale allows for some distance and allows the audience to focus more on the overall story being told, rather than all the bits that hung from it. It's a Hinchcliffe era situation. Brain of Morbius has its own preoccupations beyond Frankenstein. So any familiarity with these reference points means that you're probably going to see how these deaths happen from a mile off. Griswold's death in particular is so obvious, but it doesn't matter, that's not the point of the exercise. We're watching dominoes fall, watching cars crash. And the show can even catch you off guard in places. Episode 5, The Telltale Heart. I'm sure a lot of people saw the twist coming, but given that Vic already had a secret to be revealed that the audience was aware of, but her father wasn't, I wasn't quite expecting another body to turn up as it did in the original story. I caught on to what was happening right before the reveal, which is exactly what you want from a twist. Although, again, they did kind of give this away in episode 1 very briefly. The audience this time is not invited to root for this family to come to terms with their trauma and heal. There is catharsis to be found here, sometimes regret, maybe even some form of closure, but there's no redemption. For guidance, here's the Usher family morality tier list. The show acknowledges that Roderick's children are fundamentally damaged by being in his sphere and having him as a parent for any amount of time. All the worst behaviour can be traced back to his own toxicity, but the show never lets them off the hook for it. In each episode, when they're in the focus, they're at best callous and at worst self-absorbed, outright moral abominations. They bring their world crashing down around them through their own flailing harm. Frederick's death in particular makes it clear that whilst Roderick is undeniably an influence, they are all still responsible for their own actions. There's a difference between an explanation and an excuse. And the cycle of abuse and the impact we have on others is often inescapable. Roderick reacted against his social environment, from his mother being a religious woman who turned down medicine on her deathbed, so he grows up wanting to make a painkiller. He tries to avoid being like his father by acknowledging his illegitimate children. And then what happens? He turns into a man who regurgitates the snarling speeches that were made to him by his first boss all those years ago. He pits his children against each other, gives them everything they ask for, like Werner did to him, and uses that as a means of controlling them. And, spoiler alert, Madeline and him go out like their parents did. The same applies to the children, whether they try to be like their parents or try to make their own way as their own people. It sadly doesn't end up mattering in the end. All their fates are shared. And because the characters are such moral cesspits, when they come out with the monologues that we've come to expect from, no, I'm not calling it the Flaniverse, it doesn't really land flat if you don't emotionally resonate with what they're saying. Hell, that actually works better because the reaction the show seems to be trying to elicit is less...
That was beautiful.
And more...
He's mad. He's mad! He's madder than Mad Jack McMad, the winner of last year's Mr. Madman competition.
At the end of Roderick's monologue about lemons, I'm just pulling the same face as Dupin. It feels like everything since Hill House has been getting wider in scope and bleaker in tone. And I just think that's an inevitable result of being an artist living in a world in this state. As a result, the fall of the House of Usher feels like a natural endpoint that boasts the meatiest core. If this is the last show Flanigan's doing for Netflix, then it really feels like he's used the opportunity to cut loose. For all the fun I had on this journey, the last episode is absolutely what's made it for me.
I knew. Deep down. In the witching hour. I knew. I knew I would climb to the top of the tower on a pile of corpses.
His last words aren't just confession, they are exaltation. Perhaps the most chilling thing this series showed us was that even his mountain of corpses, even that he's still kind of proud of. He is content to die with that as his monument. And the damage won't stop with the Usher family's death. Bodies will continue to fall long after Werner flies off and Dupin retires. Ligadone will continue to get people addicted and killed, just as the effects of the opioid crisis are still being felt now, to say nothing of the damage that his children have done to people in their own lives. Is it weird for a show this bleak to be this fun? Because I had a great time watching this, but it really doesn't sound like I should have done. Maybe the most impressive thing is that Werner is able to confirm that while our actions have wide-reaching consequences beyond just the people in our orbit, friends, family, bosses, employees, this could also be for the good things we do as opposed to just webs of abuse and drug pushing. The show doesn't end on this note, and it really shouldn't have done, but the actions of Lenore, Juno, Morella, Toby and Beth, they might all do some good. Why don't you, this Halloween, go out and try to do something nice for someone? I can't promise you'll leave behind a better world, but maybe the people you help will do that. See, I could be disgracefully soppy when nobody wants me to. I'm a hypocrite, I admit it. But I'm certainly not mad. How could I be mad? Could a madman make a video this well? I'm not mad.